BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The US Treasury Secretary has warned that a failure by Congress to raise the country's debt ceiling could cause an economic catastrophe. Janet Yellen said that without an agreement to increase what the federal government can borrow, it could run out of money by early June. Michelle Fleury reports.
President Biden and Republicans in Congress are deadlocked over whether the government should be allowed to borrow money. Only Congress can give it permission to do so. If it doesn't, then within weeks the US won't be able to pay its bills or the interest on its debt. Janet Yellen warned that would be an economic catastrophe. However, she also cautioned that it was not possible for the administration to ignore Congress. President Biden meets congressional leaders later to try to negotiate a solution. But with Republicans refusing to budge unless the government agrees to spending cuts, the prospects for a settlement seem remote.
The leader of the Canadian province of Alberta, Danielle Smith, has asked the Prime Minister for federal help as nearly 100 wildfires continue to burn across the area. 29 are described as out of control. Energy firms in Alberta, Canada's main oil-producing province, have temporarily shut down operations. Almost 30,000 people have been forced from their homes. Ms. Smith announced financial support for the evacuees.
Every adult who's been evacuated and displaced for 7 consecutive days will receive $1,250, along with an additional $500 for each dependent child under age 18. These payments will help evacuees pay for accommodations, food, and other basic necessities. The payments will make those expenses one less thing for people to worry about so that they can concentrate on their families and their own well-being.
London's Metropolitan Police Force has expressed regret that 6 anti-monarchy protesters were arrested ahead of the coronation of King Charles. The force said no charges would be brought against the members of the Republic campaign group. Republic's chief executive, Graham Smith, said he was considering legal action against the Met.
We certainly are minded to take further action, and we also want explanation as to why we had 4 months of briefings in which we were told that all of our plans were absolutely acceptable and fine and well within the law, and then we were arrested. We want to know where those decisions came from. I'd like to know whether there is any pressure from the Home Office and the Home Secretary.
Tens of thousands of people have joined a protest in the Serbian capital Belgrade after 2 mass shootings last week. Thousands more rallied in the city of Novi Sad. Demonstrators demanded the resignation of top officials. They also called for TV stations and newspapers they accuse of promoting violent content to be shut down. BBC News. A court in New York has heard the closing arguments in a civil trial in which the former US President Donald Trump is accused of raping and later defaming a writer, E. Jean Carroll. Ms. Carroll's lawyer said her client's testimony had been credible, consistent and powerful. Mr. Trump's lawyer said there were no witnesses for the defence to call because the story was made up. Canada has expelled a Chinese diplomat, Zhao Wei, who it accuses of attempting to intimidate a member of the Canadian Parliament and his family. It follows an intelligence report that said China sought details about Michael Chong's relatives in Hong Kong. Mr. Chong has been critical of Beijing's treatment of Uyghur Muslims. China has condemned the decision. Gunmen have attacked a church in Nigeria's Kaduna state, kidnapping at least 25 people. Over the last 2 years, there have been frequent mass kidnappings by criminal gangs. The singer, Grace Bumbry, who was one of the first African Americans to become a star of international opera, has died aged 86. Judy Frankel looks back at her life.
Grace Bumbry was born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1937. Her father was a railroad porter, her mother a school teacher, but music played a central part in family and church life. And when she was just 17 years old, she won a local radio talent show, singing one of Verdi's great arias. Her success got her a scholarship to study music, and in 1960 she made her operatic debut in Paris. After several years as a mezzo-soprano, she switched to being a soprano, adding more roles to her repertoire. In 2009, President Obama presented her with a Kennedy Center honor for her contribution to the performing arts.
BBC News.